Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I'm so sorry that it took me so long to create another video, but I was just swamped at work, so I just really didn't have any time before this to create a new video. But today we're going to dive right into it and we're going to discuss the book The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. So get yourself some tea and let's dive into this classic.
What he told me in the next hour, I cannot bring my mind to set on paper. I saw what I saw, I heard what I heard, and my soul sickened at it. And yet now when that sight has faded from my eyes, I ask myself if I believe it, and I cannot answer. My life is shaken to its roots, sleep has left me, and the deadliest terror sits by me at all hours of the day and night. I feel that my days are numbered and that I must die. And yet I shall die incredulous. As for the moral turpitude that man unveiled to me, even with tears of penitence, I cannot, even in memory, dwell on it without a start of horror.
So now we're ready to discuss some literature. So the first thing I did to get started for this read was read a little bit about its historical context. So the book is a post-Victorian novel, and that means that in the Victorian time period, the books were very much about the traditional norms and values and keeping up the appearances. Whereas in post-Victorian novels, they kind of to make a counter movement to that. And especially in this Gothic Horror novel of Robert Louis Stevenson, he really is trying to portray the image of the animal-like nature of humankind. Now, enough about the book and the process. Let's go into the actual plot and story of this book. Actually, the book is about a series of strange incidents and especially very violent incidents. And in the end, we learn out who did it. It's pretty soon it becomes clear that Mr. Hyde is responsible for this, but right at the end of the story you know exactly all the details about who this Mr. Hyde is and how he is connected to Dr. Jekyll. The story takes place in London and it's not mentioned that explicitly, only a few times really the city of London or a specific neighborhood or street or park is mentioned. And the author is doing that on purpose because he wants us to be familiar to where it's taking place. And other than that, the locations are quite murky and he puts a lot of emphasis on the mood. So it's dark, it's muddy, it's cloudy, there's like yellow brownish smoke. And the references to London are only there to make sure that we understand like this could happen in every city of the world. Also in the city where you live, because London is that familiar to us. In addition to that, an important role in the story is for the norms and values. So you really see a few men that are set in their ways and norms and values. So they talk openly about how people should or should not behave and what society thinks of them. But you notice that the events are deviating from that norm. And in the end, well, it becomes quite clear that what you see is not what you get and that humanity has a much deeper and darker secret than those norms and values would suggest. And that is a very important message that the author wants to convey with this book. What I personally liked about the book is that the characters seem very round. Even though the book is very thin, it's like 70 pages. For each of the characters, you do get that distinct set of them being, higher ranked members of society. They are doctors, they're lawyers, those kinds of things. And you really see and understand that vibe. One of the other things that I liked about this book and that really made me think is the battle between good and evil. Because especially in the end of the book, Dr. Jekyll is talking about his point of perspective on the events, and he's portraying himself like a moral, just person. But he is talking about the behavior of Mr. Hyde in a way like he went out on adventures. Whereas by that point in the book, you know that those adventures were quite violent. So it's interesting that he chose the language of an adventure to talk about such an incident. Also, Jekyll and Hyde get in a life and death battle with each other. And it's quite interesting to think about that, because in the end, Hyde commits suicide. But by doing so, he also kills the good version, which is Dr. Jekyll. But what then is the moral of this story? That the evil conquered the relatively good Dr. Jekyll? Or is the story that in the end, evil is so evil that it kills itself? So that was something that I'm still reflecting upon. And if you have thoughts about that, just feel free to leave them down below. But I think this also nicely touches upon why I think it is so nice to read literature, but also why it is so important that you and everyone around you engages in reading literature. It really gives you something to think about. So for me in this book, it was the battle between good and evil and moral standards and how to deviate from those and if to deviate from those. And every book can give you another kind of universal lesson that you could learn from and can reflect upon. So the meaning of life, the relationship between love and marriage and friendship, those kinds of things. And I think that is especially cool. So if you have a recommendation on what book to read next, also feel free to leave it down below. I think this is as much as I can share about this book right now. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and I'll be sure to come back very, very soon with my newest video. Bye!